There is no great literature without nationality. There is no great nationality without literature. Before getting into the specific cases of artists as nation builders, a concept actually I'm going to revise a little bit. I don't think that's quite right. I want to lay a bit of groundwork for what art is more fundamentally trying to accomplish. This wanders into the philosophical weeds a bit, but I think it might offer some important clarifications about why we care about these questions at all. So I've argued before, and this is a question that comes up quite a bit when I'm talking to people, whether or not there is such a thing as right-wing or conservative culture. And for me, the idea of culture being right-wing or conservative is a doomed proposition. This gets the causality entirely backwards. Politics is where we ultimately end up, if the art does its job well, that is, but it's certainly not where we start. To the extent art is right-wing, it is only as an emergent property because of its capacity to reveal what is capital T true about the world and our experience in it. So what does it mean for something to be capital T true? For our purposes, it's enough to say that some things, statements, stories, films, pieces of music, have the quality of truthness, and other things have the quality of falseness, neither of which qualities are imagined or merely circumstantial or constructed, but are fundamental and timeless and verifiable through a sufficiently attuned aesthetic sensibility. That is, some things are true, some things are false, and we can know the difference. But language alone won't get us there. Argument cannot mediate our disagreements about what is true and what is not. Hence we get phrases, mistaken phrases, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. This is wrong. This is also dumb. But it points to the difficulty of arguing our way into a shared understanding of what is or is not true. Rather, capital T truth is something that is felt. It is not asserted, it is unconcealed or made unhidden. Heidegger talks about this in his concept of aletheia, truth as unconcealment, rather than as mere correctness. And we can say then that art is true when it creates the emotional and spiritual conditions for the world to be revealed, much like a profound dream allows the mind to reveal itself to itself. So for those who find Heidegger a little too abstruse or dense, I was trying to think of a more like pop cultural figure who hits on a similar note, and I came up with Mr. Miyagi. So for those of you who don't know Mr. Miyagi, the Karate Kid, he teaches this young pupil, karate pupil, how to be a, proficient karate expert and win his local karate tournament. But he doesn't do this directly. If you remember, the way that he teaches the young Ralph Macchio is through a series of these cone-like chores, household chores, painting the fence, waxing a car, etc. And the philosophical lesson in this is that truth, in this case, the knowing, the authentic knowing, becomes unconcealed only when it is lived into, only when it becomes embodied. And as Mr. Miyagi says, lesson not just karate only, lesson for whole life. And one of the bedrock properties of truth is that it coheres and it endures. Both coheres and it endures. Truth aggregates and truth is lindy. Falseness, on the other hand, succumbs to entropy. Falseness needs to be constantly and artificially stabilized. False stories, false art are brittle. Lies are brittle, whereas the truth obtains. So, how are artists nation builders? With that sort of laborious preamble now under my belt, the argument goes something like this. The major premise here is that nations are constellations of enduring truths about a people, an embodied people. It's their histories, their language, their rituals, their ways of being. that cohere over time. When they no longer cohere, there is no longer a nation to speak of. The second premise here is that artists and their art disclose or unconceal those truths about the people, preparing the mind and spirit so that those truths can become embodied and felt. So the conclusion here then is that it's not the artist's job to assert or construct or build the nation. It is the artist's job to reveal the nation to itself. So then I was trying to think of a couple of real examples of artists who have engaged in a practice that could, be reasonably called nation building or nation revealing. The most obvious case is Theodor Herzl and his novel Alt Newland. And this was a novel, the English translation is Old Newland. He wrote this when he was still in Austria in 1902. Has anybody actually here read this other than me? Okay, a few of you have read this. It's a terrible novel, okay? I'm sorry to say. It's like, from a craft standpoint, it's actually like very bad. The dialogue is wooden, okay? The characters are flat. The plot is completely absurdly stitched together. There's this moment where Herzl needs to propel his characters like 20 years into the future as a plot device. And so he just whisks them off to this South Pacific island. And then a paragraph later, they're back in the exact same place we left them behind, but now they have beards. And this is how he like deals with this problem of 20 years going by. So it's like a terribly crafted novel. Also, there's the utopian vision of the future of Israel is very naive and sort of implausible in the novel. And in fact, has the quality of being false. It's a sort of this incorrectness, the way that this future sort of techno-communist Israel is constructed in the novel. However, and this is the novel's redeeming quality, is that it does contain a more enduring truth. The novel reveals the capital T truth, which is the longing of European Jewry in this case, the possibility of a nation, a reborn nation in this case. And so what Herzl's book does is project a future that Jews could and eventually do live into. A slightly less obvious case of this from the same period in history is William Butler Yeats in Ireland. And Yeats is reimagining Irish nationalism on the precipice of the War of Independence. Okay, that would be a couple decades later, but he embarks on this very self-conscious cultural project right at the tail end of the 19th century. Yeats, who is a Protestant, not a Catholic, who speaks English and not Gaelic, is a somewhat unlikely avatar for this emergent Irish culture. But his identity also forces the question, is there such a thing as Ireland? And if so, what is it? Is there an Irish people? And if so, who are they? Is Ireland a Celtic Ireland? Is it a Christian Ireland? Is it a Gaelic Ireland? Is it a Catholic Ireland? A parliamentary Ireland? A Republican Ireland? Is it Norse? Is it Danish? Is it Scottish? Is it Spanish? Is it English? And how do all of these different origin stories potentially fit together? Could it be said that there is some capital T true nation that can cohere out of this historical mosaic? Could an Irishness be revealed and lived into by its people so that it could become a felt and embodied thing that could be inclusive of these disparate and often antagonistic parts? Unlike Herzl, who needs to reveal a future, Yeats's task is to reveal a mythic past. Following Thomas Davis's insight that nationalism is first a state of mind, Yeats understood that to change the national mind, you must change what it can feel as true. Yeats takes on a few different strategies to achieve this task, which we know from later autobiographies were entirely intentional. One is that he revives the old Irish tradition of the poet as a central political figure. In an early poem that becomes one of his most famous, It's titled To Ireland in the Coming Times. He places himself in the pantheon of great Irish poets of the past who conferred legitimacy to their kings and often spoke on their behalf. The point of this for Yeats is to assert the importance of the role of the artist and of art more broadly so that the pronouncements of the artist carry the weight of political authority. He also very deliberately and explicitly excavates the stories and heroes of the medieval Ulster cycle. These poems are some of Yeats's most well-regarded and demonstrate his real literary genius, unlike Herzl. They are self-consciously nostalgic and homesick for a lost Ireland, which beg to be reclaimed, but without the cloying sentimentality that usually comes with these qualities. They also maintain a kind of mythic grandeur and supernatural magic that elevates them above mere history and above the specific ethno-religious claims of any particular contemporary Irish subgroup, while still being squarely grounded in a recognizably Irish tradition. Finally, Yeats understands that a nation's art, if it is indeed going to bind the nation, must not be too insular. His Abbey Theatre, which he opens in 1904, puts these mythic poems on the stage where they can be more viscerally felt and made into a more central part of Irish cultural life at the time. Yeats explained this decision with a quote. He says, "I am no longer writing for a few friends here and there, but I'm asking my own people," that is, he is instantiating the nation with that phrase itself, "my own people to listen, as many as can find their way into the theater. Perhaps one can explain plays where one has more room than in songs and ballads, even those intricate thoughts, those elaborate emotion that are oneself." Okay, so this gets us to America. What about America? Where are we right now in time? And the truth is that neither of these examples are really that applicable. Our situation is very different. We do have an established past. We have a self-understanding of our founding, and we negotiate and reinterpret that founding very often, and there are disagreements, but there is no disagreement about when and where and what it is. Our founding fathers got together and created this nation, and there's a question of their motivations and all that, but we know where the founding starts. We know where the Pilgrims landed, for example. We have this established past. We have the coherent mythology. What we lack is confidence in our present. We do not need a Herzl to conjure a future or a Yeats to excavate a buried origin. We need artists who can reveal what America is now. Think again of Mr. Miyagi. His pupil will not be told. He must be led by indirection into confidence. Perhaps it is the case with our own self-conception now. Our cultural life is very confused, attenuated, lacking self-confidence, lacking coherence. It is too fragmented, it is self-antagonizing, and it will not be explicitly directed. A durable national identity cannot be asserted into being. I will end with a poem here that models an oblique kind of revelation, and one that I would like to encourage would-be artists to carefully consider. This comes from a poem from William Carlos Williams, a mid-century poet, a modernist poet, and this is a poem called The Red Wheelbarrow. "So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater, beside the white chickens." I will not elaborate further. Thank you.